Chapter 6, Legalizing Narcotics, may have looked easy at first. It definitely was not. The topic of legalizing narcotics is a difficult road to walk since there are many different factors to account for. One of the main points of the chapter is that a person could argue that human nature thrives best when there is freedom, and therefore people should have the right to freely choose behavior that is not destructive to others or themselves. Even though this point sounds like a promising ideal, it can easily be taken to extremes. In society today, we have placed laws and rules to protect each person throughout the world because it is unrealistic to assume that each person is going to consider what is right in a difficult situation. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 10:23 that while we have the right to do anything, not everything is helpful or constructive. God has given us the ability to choose, but everything has consequences, whether for the good or bad. In Ethics Approaching Moral Decision, Holmes states that for all human beings whose natural end is to exist, there is a natural law of self-preservation. Therefore, we should protect human life. While continuing on the topic of protecting life, the topic of abortion is not something easily navigated. However, the topic of abortions takes God's creation of humans out and the gifts children are out of play. One of the characters in the books brings up the point that a woman may not be ready to have a baby or may not be a good time in her life, and that is the reason why they believe in abortions. While a woman cannot control all the circumstances in her life, the Bible says that children are a gift from the Lord in Psalms 127:3. God designed children to be a blessing for parents in the context of marriage, but casual sex has made this point very conflicted since they offer a supposed easy way out. By assuming that a baby is not valuable simply because of the timing of a woman's life or the fact that it is still inside the body, it counteracts the fact that God created each person in his image and for a specific purpose. Many people try to overlook the fact that by ending the life of an embryo or fetus, it is saving the mother's life or sparing her from something she does not want. However, even doing a little good does not negate the evil of ending an innocent human life. No amount of good could justify the act of removing an embryo from inside the body of a mother. Before it is a fetus, a baby first develops into a human embryo. If a baby is first titled as a human embryo, then why is it considered legal to kill a human embryo? So we should want to protect all people, including an embryo. In Chapter 8, the authors brought up several important ideas about euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide. One of the main points discussed was how it was the intentional end to life, not just to alleviate the suffering. One of the points pointed out could be a case of natural law theory, which states that when life functions normally, humans should have a desire to live life. This point leaves the topic open to the fact that if someone has a terminal or limiting disability, then they might not be considered to have a fully functioning life. However, Holmes states that because of natural law theory, we should want to protect every life, even if it does not look like the typical life or it will end in suffering. I believe this means that physician-assisted suicide, when viewed for a biblical context, is wrong since it is a free act that destroys life and destroys the individual's future earthly or opportunities. The Bible states that we are not to commit murder, since human life is precious and each person is made in the image of God for a distinct purpose. In physician-assisted death or suicide, the patient, family, or doctor decide to administer harmful medications that end the life of the patient in order to spare them from pain or suffering. But by allowing this a type of euthanasia, it would create a slippery slope for people to be able to escape. By observing through a biblical context, I believe that it takes the control out of God's hands and attempts to give to humans while letting them decide what a person's time on earth is finished, instead of leaving it to God, the master of time. In Chapter 8, it discussed organ transplant, which is the process of taking an organ and donating it to a person that needs it in order to live. One point of topic was a utilitarian view of organ transplant would be prioritizing them on a waiting list to receive by ranking them based on their purpose in society. One problem with this view is who decides the value of a person. Christ died in order to give each person a blank slate. Therefore, this means that no one can place another as more or less important than themselves. The Bible states that God created each person for a distinct purpose, and each person is made in God's image. By ranking people based on their earthly status negates this important statement. Manguson states that human beings are distinct from other creatures and have a unique role and authority in creation. Each person has a purpose that only God can decide, and by prioritizing someone based on their worldly success contradicts the plan that God has, since even a person who is not considered a world influencer can still impact those around them and create a positive change by simply being where God has placed them. The chapter on reproductive technology brings up many difficult but different points. When talking about surrogacy, one of the chapters referred to it as the gestation of a baby by a woman who is not a biological mother. So it must be a good thing. It continues to state that because the Bible places an emphasis on the family and the blessings of children, the technology used to bring that about would be appreciated, since it helps a family live in response to the Bible. However, in Jeremiah 29:11, it says that God has a plan for each person, and that plan is to help us prosper and not to harm us, but to provide a future and a hope. I believe that if God placed a married couple together, they are unable to produce a baby naturally, they should trust God instead of trying to create something that He did not want to bless them with. While this may seem like a harsh statement, God can do huge things with just a little faith. The book shows that by bringing a third party into the conception and birth of the baby, it violates the sanctity of marriage and the child's sense of where they belong. In Mangason's book, he states that those who obey God and are faithful to Him, who live by faith and have something that cannot be attained through childbearing, that is, an everlasting name that will never be cut off.